All right, so I did a little cockpit stuff, but I'll show you more. All those little boxes. The only major difference I did was the grip, the spade grip I made out of fuse wire because what they had in the kit didn't seem to work for me. But you can see like those little colored lines. Oh, by the way, I didn't cut myself. That's just paint. The little colored areas are where you put other little junction boxes and things like these two little guys and that big thing there. So what I want to show you is how to cut these out. Now I learned this from some people that know a lot more than I do. You use a piece of beeswax, or I got a piece of paraffin that I'm using, and every, I don't know, 2 or 3 slices with your X-Acto, run it through there, and it helps with the, I guess, the lubrication of the blade. And the cuts on the paper are cleaner. You don't make mounds and rips in the paper nearly as much. Um, so thanks to Ray and Don and Greg, they're all people who I respect a great deal, and they do this all the time. Apparently, it's an old trick, and I never knew about it. So I'm starting to do that with my cuts, and it seems to be making a difference. So just let you know, it's a little hint that might work for you. Now you got to make emboss these little areas to turn them to make the box. However, you got to go on the back side because you don't want to rip off paint on the front. And I think if you emboss on the back side, that's going to make an area that's missing paper, excuse me, and then that should be able to roll it over. So some of them are easy, and you just come through and make your little embossing on the back side, just matching up where those flat pieces are. But then there's other parts that are a little harder to do. See this piece, for instance, is easy because you just run along that side, that edge, and that should work out to be perfect on the front side, which it is. It worked out really nice. But the other little bend in there is you gotta be more careful because it doesn't have an automatic edge to run by. It's kind of into the little piece of the box a little further. So this piece right here, there's a little bend that has to go to make the bottom of the box right there. So what I did was I went to see those 2 little dots? Those are pencil dots. I went to my light and I held it up and I could see the line through the painted side of the paper, printed side of the paper, and then I just put a couple of the lines and now I connect the dots and that sucker is spot on. So it will look good just like the rest of it. And now you start folding the box. Um, and I use a little pair of tweezers to kind of hold to give me a straight edge. Now I haven't tried yet, but I'm going to try the alcohol trick here in a little bit. I'm going to try it on the rear cockpit to see if that works to get a real sharp box corner edge. I'm going to definitely try to use that on the Vespa when I build it because there's lots of boxes in there. Um, I found a nice little light gray marker. My daughter bought me a whole set of these little water markers a long time ago, and this one seems to be kind of a good color for this, so I'm using it for the interior edging. So all the way around. And I put a little glue on an edge. I tested it first to make sure I always get confused. Is the flap going to go sort of inside another part, or is it going to lay on the outside? Does it butt up against it, or does it go on the inside of it? I think this one goes on the inside. So I kind of test fit it and looked at it to make sure that it looks square so that one side is not like digging in or caving in. Then I figure it's even. So in this case, it seemed like it goes on the inside. A little bit of glue on the other flaps on either side, and I put a little too much on so it's easy to remove with your little applicator or your finger. Put a little more glue on that part. And then these little dudes on either end, I do on both sides at once because now you can use your thumb and forefinger and kind of push things together and automatically holds things together. So that piece is done and it's going to go right in there when it's time. So there's a little marking on the interior that shows where it's supposed to go. So, again, the painting on this model is really nice and you can see where stuff is supposed to go. So I added a little bit of glue here along those little lines that show kind of where the box is supposed to attach. And notice the side wall is a little curved on purpose, but that doesn't seem to cause any trouble. These things fit real nice. It works great. There I plopped it in, and it's crooked, but you got time to fix it. I even got a bunch of glue on this one. You can see down there, but it's easy to remove, and this Aleene's tacky glue dries fast, but it also dries clear. So even if there's something there and you forgot it, yeah, there might be a blob, but it's going to be clear and it's not going to, take away a whole bunch. So there you can see where things are starting to come together. And I'm making sure that this is squeezed shut and it's flat and true as best as I can get it. So there's still some more things to put on the interior, but when it folds up together closed, it's going to look pretty cool. And it is going to be closed in, so it's going to be hard to see everything, but I like it. Now there's two little things that go up there. I don't know what they are, but those I have to cut out, and they're really tiny. And the reason I'm doing these and showing you is that this is stuff that I want to practice um, for that tank I'm going to build. But there I went through my little wax, and then these are so small, I don't really use a straight edge. I just go through along the edges of the printing and use my X-Acto and just kind of cut it straight through. And this is a little piece is going to go up. It has a little handle on it that sticks up. I don't know what it's for exactly. I might put some wires and things on some of these to make it look like there's electrical pieces connecting them. I gotta see what the interior really looks like on the real airplane. So cut these out, and then that little black cross there, that's another little tiny box that goes. So I'm just plopping these out one after the other and cutting it out. And then I hold it at the edge of the, it's kind of too small for, at least to me, to emboss it. So I just cut it, I just hold it with tweezers and fold it over, and it forms a pretty good box. It seems to be fine. And it's so tiny, but you use your tweezers and you use your fingers to sort of hold it around and make it into a cube. And it works. I end up putting some glue on the inside, kind of slop it in there accidentally. But the idea is to make it so that it does grab onto the sides and it glues into a little box. Got to color the edges. So again, I'm using my little gray marker in this case, which is nice. I learned from a fella I think named Eric in Holland. He said gray is basically the best color to cover almost all your paper edging, and I think he's right. In this case, it looks like almost when it kind of dries, it's not really gray, but it almost looks like the greenish color of the interior, so it looks good. And here I am putting in some glue, and then it's hard to take a picture of all of this. Again, I still have to figure out how to do better or get a different camera, but because there's people who have pictures of people, popping zits online. So I mean, there's got to be a way to get close and make it look cool, but you have to trust me that what we're doing. I'm using my little fat fingers and thumb as a little vise and trying to kind of force it to hold it in place. And then I just hold it for a while, not too long, and it will start to grab and glue. And then you just make sure that the pieces don't flap out. And as long as they're in there and the glue dries, it should remain in its little shape. And then another way to anchor it is to actually put some glue on the end and put it in the side panel, which is what I'm doing here, because that helps it stay square because you're actually putting it where it's supposed to go. So there's that piece. And you can see on the interior, you can see those pieces are a little bit lighter where those components go. There's a whole slew of them in the rear cockpit, so we'll show you a couple of those, but hopefully we'll just kind of run through those off camera so that we can get that done pretty quick. But we'll show you some parts, and there's a real neat seat back there. A bunch of Oh, my wife bought some pie for Pie Day. So after that, came back and added that other little piece. I didn't show it, but there's that other little piece in there. And now that is a piece I added, didn't show you in that piece. That little tiny piece down there, I want to demonstrate, it has a little handle on it. It has something that goes up and is like a little ball on the top. So it's something that the guy uses. It sits right in there. And there it is right there. That's what I put together. And it was easy to put together, but I got to make that thing. And you say, well, how do you know how big it has to be? Well, on the plans, there's a handy dandy picture that shows all of these, the wire bending, and there's S4, and that gives you the shape or the size. And it's tiny, tiny, tiny. And so what I use is tiny 0.5 millimeter fuse wire. These aren't going to be, even though the fuse wire is bendy, no one's going to go in there and actually use these things. So it should be fine. So I straighten out my fuse wire in the regular way by rolling it under a straight edge. And then you got a nice piece of wire. You could use stretched sprue, or you could use an actual piece of wire. But I use this stuff because it's so easy to cut. It makes life easy. So I'm cutting it to the size, and it's very small, but it will look good when it's done. And just like the other, oh yeah, I found out the best thing is to give a little zip kicker on the piece. There's by the way, a little dot that shows where it's supposed to go on there that's printed. Then you take your tiny weeny piece, and I dip the end in a puddle of super glue off camera here, and then I go ahead and put it on there. And with the zip kicker, it glues almost instantaneously, if not sooner. And then you've got a nice solid piece that isn't going anywhere. I check it and make sure it's not jiggling around, and it's nice and solid and part of that piece now. So that's how I'm putting in those handles, and you can see the ones on the right side of the cockpit floor. That's how I made those handles. Just checking it to make sure it is solid. Now, on the top of it, there's a little ball on top. Maybe it was made out of wood, I'm not sure, but it's a little handle up there that the guy could grab and push and pull. What I do with those is I use my Alien's tacky glue, and I make a big circle, a big blob, and it looks kind of big, and it shrinks when it dries a little bit, but you'll end up with something that's round, and that's what those are, that yellow blob and the red blob, and they look very good. They look kind of nice. So that's going to dry. Once that dry, I'll paint it a color. I might paint that one just black, just to give everything a little bit different look. You won't see it very well anyway. But I like to find out what those things are. I do not know what those are all for. Maybe something's flaps, maybe something, who knows. Now back there next to the seat, there's a tank that goes there. And sadly, it has a pedal design. Not sadly, I should learn how to do it. I should be Polish. This little piece here. And I don't know what it would have been. Is it oxygen? I don't know if it's compressed air. Who knows what it is. But that is right. Gotta find it. There it is. Right there, and it's got a couple of straps that go with it. And if you can't see it, the one side is flat, the other side is pedal. And so what I've done to do here is, this takes a while, but this is just, I thought I may as well just film what I'm doing. Just as a, what if you get something out of it? What if it works? So the first thing I did was round it out using my fingers as a back plate, just like Neil does. I always use my fingers for doing those things. Once in a while I'll use a pad, but your hands are actually really good. Fleshy enough, and they especially for small pieces. Found another piece of aluminum tubing, I think 3/32 or something, and it turned out to be just about perfect. So I'm rolling it in there, and I'm trying to basically break the paper. I think if I'd have wet the paper down on the inside with some alcohol or something, I think that would have gone even better. But I'm kind of squeezing it with my fingers, my index and my thumb, and I'm seeing that it's going to come together nicely. Now I work on the pedal. So I got these little dabbing tools, these little tiny things, and they got little tiny perfect spheres on the end. And I just start rolling them up and down, back and forth, sort of the length of the pedals. You can't see what's going on really. This is poor. But it's just like doing a spinner, but it's just teeny weeny. And you do this several times, and you'll notice that the pedals do start to curl in. I mean, they actually do work. Now there's a tool for this to make the pedals look really good. This one's so small I decided not to use it. I can't remember. I got to go back and look if I ever showed you guys this tool that I made that I didn't design. It was something I read about. Maybe I did on the ME410 spinner. Anyway, I gotta look. If not, I'll make another one. But it's a great little tool. It's a piece of rolled paper with cornstarch in it, so that the little rolls of paper don't get stuck, and they're very slippery. And you can push, once you put it into a cylinder, you can basically push the pedal design and twist as you push, and it will automatically pull those pedals together and form a really nice edge, or much better than you can do by hand. With this one, I think I can kind of do it because it's so small. it's going on the bottom of that cockpit floor. I think it's going to be fine. But here I'm just tweaking it a little bit more. Again, bear with me. This is, I don't cut any of this out really because I want you to see kind of in real time what I did. Just because, why not? I'm looking now for another piece of wire and I can't find a good one that's smaller. I'm trying to get the edges that are gonna, there's a piece of wire, but got a chunk of glue on it. Finally, I find a piece of wire that will work, I think. Just to get the very edges so that they curl around and make a little bit more of a curve so that they'll come together and butt up to each other without being flattened, essentially. So I roll that in there to make those edges. And my pedal thing is already starting to curl over. And once I got that together, I'm pretty satisfied that that's going to look good. And I suppose I could put a tab in here, but I didn't. I just butt joined it. So I added glue along there. And because I've rolled it nicely, it should glue together pretty well, which it does. I put this little guy inside. That side is kind of has a burr, so I put it on the other side. Put that in there as a way to hold it, and I know that that's sort of the right diameter. And just sort of squeeze it shut and hold it together many times, and then ultimately it started to dry nicely. And then I very carefully pulled out the aluminum tubing, and there it is. One way to keep it kind of solid is the butt end there has a little circular piece that I cut out with my little Japanese circular tool that my son got me for Christmas a couple years ago. That's a thing that I love. It's worth its weight in gold for book binding, but I use it for this paper and it works just fantastic. So this goes in there and it fits like a charm. It fit really slick. And that just helps also. You know, this is another place where there's glue, and that's going to help hold that cylinder together quite nicely. Pretty dang good. And now I'm just making sure that the edging is nice and glued. There's a piece up here that isn't glued, so I put too much on, then wipe some off, and it kind of smashes it into the crevice. And then I sort of take my X-Acto blade and kind of push gently to close the seam. That's the bottom, so you won't see it anyway. It's going to be on the floor. But you don't want it to curl and roll up funny. Now the next thing is, see those lines that go around it that are light? That's where straps fit on this thing. In retrospect, I probably wouldn't have put the straps on because they're dark and you can't really see them. But to me, they'd have been cooler if they'd have been like a lighter color. But in any event, these little straps I cut off and I colored the edges, and then I pre-rounded them. At least one of them I did. One of them I kind of forgot to do that. But I start with putting a little bit of glue on a tip. Drop it a few times. Put a little glue on the tip here, and then start at the bottom. And this will wrap all the way around that cylinder ultimately. So it's just a matter of putting it over the printed piece that you can see the light gray strap where it's supposed to go, and I just put it right like that, and then I just slowly add glue to the rest of it and roll it around and just make sure that it's even. Like I said, I'd have probably done something a little different next time, a different color, because it'd be cooler if you actually see them. It's so dark in there, you're never going to see them. But anyway, roll this together, and now you've got that finished. And now I'm just going to try to work on that tip. It's kind of there, but it's still open. So what I'm doing is I'm pinching my fingers closed, and I'm twisting and pushing the cylinder into my little fingers. My fingers, I'm trying to use them I'm not squeezing them. I'm really using them as a place to push against. And as I turn and roll the cylinder, the idea is that it's kind of rolling the pedals together, working like that tool I'm telling you about. And then I put some more glue in there, and I color up a little bit with my Sharpie marker just to get rid of some of the white glue. And that's going to be sufficient because, again, this thing's on the bottom of the cockpit. Can't see it hardly. But it's a piece that's supposed to be there. And I, again, got to figure out what it was on the real airplane. It would be nice to know. I'm sure there's some pictures of the interior of the Sonia It's a very pretty airplane. I like it. Anyway, so I then glue this piece in. There's a couple of marks down there, and I'm putting a dab of glue on each mark. Um, Again, the positioning of these is just fantastic. It works really well. And then delicately push this thing up, and the pedal part goes forward. And I put it seam side down, and Bob's your aunt. There it is. I think it's a little crooked, or it's a little far forward, so I push it back a little bit. But there it is. So the interior, except for seat belts, it doesn't come with seat belts, which surprised me. So I gotta find out what some looked like. But um, I've got to put some seat belts on there because it would be cool with. They definitely need seat belts. Um, so I'm gonna probably do that before I start closing this up. But the interior for the pilot is almost done. I might see probably could, yeah. There's I'm just trying to show you. I gotta put some paper or masking tape and wire seat belts, but that's going to fold over and close and look pretty snazzy. I'm going to try to get some documentation and see if I can put any, like I say, fuse wire in various places to make it look more complicated. But all in all, fitting really, really well so far. That seat, oh yeah, there I am putting a little ball on there. The seat was the hardest thing, believe it or not. And we'll work together on the rear cockpit next. Coming along nicely.